All right, we're back. So as you can tell, trying to shrink fit that to the column was a total fail. So I do this in single takes and no editing. So you see what doesn't work and what might work. So um, had a vacation in between. So we're a couple weeks later doing this right now. So anyway, here's what I've come up with after I've had some time to sleep on it and re-engineer this a little bit. I changed my thought process of how this needed to work. So what I have done is I had to slit the bushing. I slit the bushing lengthwise like this so it would split to get it off where I made a mess out of it up here. So no good deed goes unpunished, and the best laid plans, you know how that goes. So anyway, I decided that this being tight on this tube probably really isn't important. If I slid this all the way down, it's got nowhere to go. And as you can tell by the gap I have, part of that's my grinding disc kerf, but this thing is really tight. You've got to put a chisel in there to spread it to get it down here. So, I mean, it will not move. You can pick the thing up by it. So, this is the way I decided to change this. So, I don't think there's really any need to tack weld this. It's not going anywhere because it's butted all the way down here, and then the upper column tube is going to be bolted to it. So, I don't think we're really going to be changing anything. So that's what we're doing at the top. So I have gotten the machine shop to do the upper shaft. I mocked this all together already off camera, figured out my length from here through the tube and up into the upper column bearing block, up through this bearing. So I figured out how long I needed to be. And so we then welded this shaft, the old shaft for the steering wheel mounts up here. We welded that shaft up and then turned it back down so it would be a snug fit inside the Toyota internal shaft. I don't know what Toyota would actually call this, but and then we did drill it all the way through and pin it. The pin goes all the way through and it is peened on both sides, and then it is double layer welded all the way around. So that's what we're doing on the top side. And then on the bottom side, I mocked it up in the truck and figured out my distance from here to the steering box, which is down on the frame. So that's where I came up with this part. So I used a Borgeson. Let me see if I can get the part number to show up on camera. It is a smooth 3/4 inch bore to 11/16. I guess that's not the part number. There's the, get focus. There's the part number that we used. It's 11/16 36 spline to a 3/4 smooth. So once I figured out what length this output shaft needed to be to go to the gearbox, we cleaned this shaft up and cut it to length, and then I put this on there, and then the machine shop did the same treatment on this, drilled it all the way through, pinned it all the way through, peened it on both sides, and then double layer welded it. So that's not going anywhere. So anyway, that's what the mock-up looks like. So I did figure out what my column tube length needed to be. So it is already trimmed like we did at the beginning of the video, and I had to flap wheel it on the inside just a little bit to fit it to this bushing to get it on there tight. And then from the bottom section of column, I cut this piece off and reuse this bottom section. So this bushing won't be doing anything. It just helps keep dirt out of the column from coming up this way, because this piece somewhat goes in there like that and then splines in there. So what I did is I welded on 2 feet onto this and caught 2 of the Toyota bolt holes. So it'll bolt on like that, and then this goes through the floor plate and supports the column at the base. In addition, once this is in the truck, I will build a bracket that comes down from the brake booster nuts and is actually clamped to this motor and makes it so this can't, it helps it with up and down torque when the motor puts power to the steering gear. I don't think it'll really be an issue because when I had this mocked up in the truck earlier, it is pretty solid, but just adding a third leg to tighten up take up any torque load would be great. So let's see if we can put this column together. We'll see if everything works out the way I had it planned. But the first part of the video didn't plan out, so. And as you can tell, I got a pile of other crap on here. Yeah, we put timing chains in a Ford 3.5 liter EcoBoost. Imagine that. So what we're gonna do, we are gonna go ahead, I drilled this column too. I did figure out where my holes needed to be. So this is the main hole that I was worried about because this is the one I used to figure everything off of. This one I slotted a little bit with the die grinder, so I've got a little bit of leeway back and forth with that. All right, so we'll just start by fitting this, and as you can tell, this thing fits really snug. It is exactly the fit that I wanted. It just barely clears that bushing. So we'll start that bolt in the hole we built the back earlier in the video. And we will put this one in the other hole. Alright, and let me show you. So down in there, if I can hold all this at once and keep a light going. See, down in there is our splined shaft that drives into the electric gear. Now we will, I've got this gear roughly centered where the factory center mark was when they torqued the nut. You can see that white streak going across there. So I'm just going to assume that is straight. So I am going to try to get this steering shaft back in there. This old Dodge does not have a master spline in the steering wheel, but let me see if I can show you. It is technically marked right there for straight ahead. So I'm going to try to keep that orientation as close as possible. I believe in being nice to the next guy, so I'm going to try to keep that orientation the same as much as possible. We may not be able to hit it. We'll see. That goes in there like that. And then what we are going to do, I'm going to have to get something to hold this up. Give me just a minute. All right. There, got it up there where hopefully we can keep everything from falling apart. So, I'm going to try to, so what I had to do, I can't take all this apart because of the way these old ones are made. The way these old steering columns are made, this connector won't come through the hole in the shifter bowl without taking the entire thing apart, without taking all the wires out of the connector. So we're not going to do that. So that's why I got to fight with these pieces being multiples. So I cut the old shift tube off. because I'm going to put this back in. It's obviously going to be non-functional, but I need something to support it. So we're going to try to put it back the way it was, and hopefully it will work out that way. There we go. Bring these wires over that like that. All right. What I need to do is pull this up and get this bolt set up. These things use this, which is common to a lot of 50s and 60s vehicles. They use this kind of hard to deal with mounting for these upper column housings. They use a square nut in this groove, and it's got to catch just right in these holes right in here. Get the camera where you can see that square hole down in there right there. It actually has to catch like a hook on the inside of that, and then that's what holds that whole thing together. And you're going to get to watch me struggle with these things because they are a royal pain in the butt. This design is extremely common to pretty much everything designed in the 60s like this. Ford did this same thing. Ford columns are this way. Really early GM columns are this way. There we go. So now since I got this seated up here and it doesn't matter, I am going to go ahead and pull this shaft up but not disconnect it because it's kind of a tight fit on that bearing right there. So I'm going to get a little bit of oil. Get a little splash of oil to help that go down a little better against that ring. That's what I was afraid of. There we go. Might have this together, we'll see. Let's see if these things tighten up or not. Hey, we did, we caught it. We caught that one too. Well, a win's a win. I guess that's what we're after. And it looks like my shift tube's gonna work the way I like it to too. It's not doing anything, but it's not bound up either, so we're batting 1,000 so far. So let me pull this up. Guess I should have gotten a socket over here that fits this. Let me go find a socket to tap that down. So we will tap that bearing down over there. Just about there. get a deeper socket. Bottomed out. There we go. Let's go ahead and put the snap ring on there. There we go. Snap rings on there. Well, we can still spin that real good. Let's put a little bit of oil in there. Put a little bit of PB Blaster in there to lubricate that just a little bit. Alright, put a little bit of PB Blaster in there. So this bearing's coated in rubber, so I'm gonna spray it with a little bit of silicone lubricant. That'll help the rubber slide down inside the aluminum, because we have to, now we got to push this whole shaft back down in there, so. Alright, so let's see. You can see my spark mark again. There we go. And there we go. Everything's pushed all the way down in there. So we will put the bearing retainer back on first. And then this turn signal switch goes on first. Then the bearing retainer. Need to go get some screwdrivers. Alright. Get these retaining screws put in. Okay, then I forgot to put the quadrant light in there. It's been a while since I've had this apart. Get old and it starts getting hard to remember what went first and get too much stuff all tore apart at the same time, and it just all runs together. So, no harm in sitting down and trying to figure out where everything went. Alright, so now this is a really frustrating part of this thing. I replaced this thing on this tractor. This is the turn signal cancel cam, and it needed a little less engineering. There we go. Now, this is kind of a tricky piece too. So the turn signal lever actually goes in on the back side here through that pin and catches, and that screw goes through the whole thing and tightens the whole thing down. And that's how the turn signal switch works. Okay, so done with that, we can go ahead and put on the wiring cover that covers up the wires where they run down the side of the, or they come down the side of the column. I'll get you over here on that real quick here once I get all this situated. Show you what all this does. Make sure none of the wires are pinched. I do have a pinched wire in it. There we go. You got to be really careful with all these old columns with these wires, because everything in these columns is made out of metal, so everything will short them out. There's just 1,000 pinch points waiting to dig into a wire and cause you a headache with blown fuses. So I'll bring you around here so you can see how this works. Just that shield comes down, gathers up all the wires up here and gets them all together and brings them down to the harness and keeps them all out of the way. So top end is finished. Our turn signals work, and our for display only shifter works and isn't flopping around, so should be good there. So anyway, let's flip it around and let me get it set up the other way, and we'll do the other end of the column. So I decided to move over here and rig this thing in the vise to do it the other end of it, the bottom end. So let me get another socket. That should get us the rest of it put together here. All right, got all my tools gathered up and moved over here. So I'm gonna pause the camera and go wash my hands real quick. Wanted to wash my hands so I can get all the, I don't get grease on my fresh paint. So here's what we're gonna do. We gotta put two of these pieces together in sequence, but I've still got my mark lined up where I want my center line in the column. So I need to align this. I had everything figured out. So when the column is straight ahead, this bolt is straight up and easy to access at the steering box. So that's the way we got to put it on there. So since we're at a little bit of an angle, we're going to have to put it on there about like that. So, but we have to put these two pieces on here at the same time. Run that jam nut back. Actually, I will take that screw completely out because we'll be doing something different with it here in a minute. So my tube goes on here like this. So if I want my to be lined up, that's about where I want it. So I will put in these two bolts, tighten them down so my lower column is where I want it to be. So that will work right there. So I can pull this back out. I need to go ahead and put my lower column plate. All this stuff, lower column plate needs to go on. The lower column seal needs to go on. And then the plate that covers up the hole in the floor needs to go on. And then we put our shaft back in and make sure it's where I want it to be. I think that's pretty close to where I want it. A spline one way or the other is not going to hurt anything. So then, to put this all together the way I have planned, I drilled an access hole. So we will turn this column around until the hole lines up. All right, so I got that lined up. I'm gonna try to put a little bit of Loctite on this thing. Looks like I need a new bottle of Loctite. There we go. Not that it really matters because this doesn't have any place it can go anyway, but get that started. But I want to get this in that groove that was the end of that shaft. I want this pretty well centered. All right, that's tight. And then we need to take this socket in there and run the lock nut down. All right, that's good. Then I just need to put these screws in that hold that bushing in. I couldn't put these screws in down here first because they won't fit through the floor plate. And we'll turn this back around till we're straight where I wanted it to be. All right, we'll get this thing back over on the other bench and we'll look at it all complete. And there we go. 169 Dodge D200 pickup truck column with a Toyota Prius electric steering assist unit in it. So as you can see, I'll turn, that's too, don't have enough grip to turn it down there, so you can watch it turn down here. I'll turn it at this end and you see it's moving, no trickery. So anyway, maybe next episode, this episode's run on way too long, so I'm gonna try to, the next episode will be putting it in the truck. So I'm trying to wire it up. So like and subscribe, and until next time, keep working on